What's up, church family? Welcome back to the Revivalist for Christ channel. I am back with another Mental Health Monday with my co-host Jack from ChristianConvos, and today we are going to be talking about how you can provide care for somebody who is struggling with mental illness and also not to get drained yourself. So before we get started, if you like our Mental Health Mondays, make sure you subscribe and like this video. So for me, I know that one of the things that I've always heard in my struggles with mental illness is people get exhausted on the giving end in terms of giving support to those in mental illness. And those who are struggling with mental illness feel like they're not receiving support. So Jack and I want to tackle both ends today. So Jack, I know that you were interested in talking about those who feel isolated and like they're not receiving support of any kind. So what do you have to say about that?
I guess the biggest thing is when it comes to if you're someone who is struggling with mental illness and you feel like you're not receiving from other people, I guess the biggest thing is that perception is not always reality. Someone taking the time to talk to you is, for some people, they don't even think twice about it. It's just, second nature to them. For others, it's not. For some people, that's a huge decision for them that they are deciding to take. When you are deciding to either confide in somebody or talk to somebody about your problems, or essentially have like a talk therapy session with one of your friends, depending on the person who it is, some people are more keen to that, some people are not. When you feel like you're not getting anything, some people don't always know what to say, some people don't always have anything to give. And I think that we need to kind of be more understanding sometimes and not hold other people to these crazy expectations. I remember I had a friend who I was trying to confide in. I trusted them and I was just talking to them about like stuff that was on my mind. And I remember they kind of were sitting there like, I hear what you're saying, but I feel really bad. I don't know how to help you. And I remember at first I took it as an insult. I was like, are you freaking, what response is that? And I was like, wow, okay, I don't know how to help you. And then I thought about it and I was like, not everyone is a therapist. Not everyone has the same level of empathy. And I'm not like shaming people who don't, some people just don't have, some people just don't think like that, and not people don't always have like anything to say. Sometimes some people are a little bit more comfortable or less comfortable with it. And so I think that if you are talking to somebody and you feel like you're not getting anything out of it, or that you feel like the person doesn't care, it's not necessarily true. That person might care a lot. They just don't know how to express it, or they just might simply not have anything to say. And so if you're someone who is worrying about that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean that they don't care. They just simply might not have anything to say because they might not know what to say.
And I think there is a level of volatility that comes in the interpersonal relationships when someone is struggling with mental illness because their perception is blocked in certain scenarios. I personally, there have been times where that barrier gets broken down of being able to distinguish between someone's intent and how you perceive it. And a lot of it comes from trauma and being hurt in the past. And you perceive certain things as direct attacks and a character flaw that can be attributed back to an abusive or toxic relationship. So you do tend to lash out. So I always try to take a step back in those scenarios and try not to act emotional until I have time to evaluate the situation. Obviously, depending on how emotional it makes you and how hurt you are, sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. But I do think communication is the best key in resolving all those issues because you don't know where the other person is coming from.
Mhm.
And for the other person, I think there's such this desire and expectancy to have all the answers for every problem that a friend comes to you with.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's enough just to listen. It's enough just
Absolutely.
to be there. I've had friends spend the night with me and just kind of make sure I was okay. I've had friends just take me on a car ride. I've had friends just give me a hug. Like sometimes that physical just being there, especially in a time where we're forced to be isolated and the closest we can get with people is 6 feet and
Mhm.
all that. It really is something rather important. I'm curious to get your take on this though, because I think for myself and for a lot of people, there is this dialogue of, well, I'm always there for this person, but this person fails to show up to me. Like I feel like I'm always the one giving and I'm there for 20 someone 24/7, but I don't feel that I have that. So what would you
Mhm.
say to that, Jack?
Yeah, I try my best to like reach out to people, like checking up on people, seeing how people are doing, like, hey, like it's been a while, like everything good. And I sometimes feel like that isn't what I get. And I think because accepting that not everyone thinks like that, not everyone has that mindset of, oh, let me check up on this person. Doesn't mean that they don't care, doesn't mean that they don't care about you. It's just simply that's just not a thought that goes through their brain. Maybe they're really busy and for them they need to put all of their focus into either their work or something else, or they just, again, like some people just don't have those thoughts, and again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just the way that they're wired. And so I think, not easier said than done, but I think sometimes not overthinking it is a really big thing. Like sometimes when someone either doesn't respond to you or something, someone doesn't get back to you or someone doesn't reach out to you, it's not because they don't care, it's just simply because they're not thinking. I think it's a lot of just not expecting the worst. And obviously this is something that takes time, just training your brain to like, let me not jump to the conclusion that this person hates me and is avoiding me. Maybe they're just in the middle of something. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they haven't reached out to me because they have a lot on their plate right now. And I think that kind of not overthinking it is huge. And if it does get to the point where you feel like you are just giving and giving and giving, and you really feel like you are just empty because you're like busy bleeding for everybody else, I don't think there's anything wrong with just taking some time to focus on yourself. This is a huge, like I talk about self-care a lot because I've recently seen the need for it. Like in our classes that I take for like school for therapy, they literally are like, oh yeah, like when you're constantly listening to people's problems, you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And this isn't limited to therapists. This is limited to everybody, or not limited. This is extended to everybody. And yes.
Not to interrupt, but something that I've noticed that maybe you could even attest to is it seems like a lot of therapists are in therapy themselves to
Yes.
kind of.
Absolutely. There are a lot of therapists who also go to therapy. That is something that I actually even learned in, I think, my first ever counseling class. I remember they were like, hey, like a lot of therapists see therapists. And that is literally just so that they have someone who can listen to you, who's trained to listen to you, who can help you through that. I do talk about seeing a therapist a lot, but it's because it is someone who is trained to help with those issues. I think that there's never anything wrong with like seeking out advice from a friend, from a fellow brother and sister in Christ, from even like again like us as YouTubers. But seeing an actual professional, seeing a professional counselor or a licensed therapist is huge, I think, and especially for people who are therapists, that is a big thing that is encouraged, because when you're constantly pouring into other people and just listening to other people's issues all day, it's draining. And also a big part of self-care that I found recently is just spending time alone with God. It's when you're constantly surrounded by people and listening to other people, it's very rare that you find yourself alone with your own thoughts. And I think that it's very important to spend time with the Lord alone. Like obviously we all come together, community is healing, we love being able to have fellowship with one another, it's great, but I think that there is a lot of benefit from taking time to just socially recharge and mentally recharge. I think are two very big things.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, they don't realize that, for example, with us, there's a lot of people that reach out to us, and it does take time to circle back around. And sometimes there's issues that take research and all that. So it is hard.
And issues
That's,
that we can't even help on. I feel bad, but like that's another thing.
yeah, yeah, true. And I know you have probably been there because me, as an overthinker, I know that I've been there where it's like, you do reach out to someone and you don't receive a response in the time that you feel they should have responded to. You spend all day getting worked up, emotional, You feel like your friendship fell through. You go through the 5 stages of grief, and then they just text you like at 11 at night, and they're like, "Hey, sorry, lost service on a road trip. Like, how's it going?" And it's like, well, I feel silly now.
Exactly, dude, 110%. Like, I feel so bad because I know I am guilty of this. I work at the front desk a lot of times, like at my job. If you're ever someone who reaches out to me over email, like, I apologize if it's like a day before I get back to you. I apologize. But I think it's important to understand that everyone's human beings. We get on here on YouTube and we obviously show our faces. We all look like everything's all fine and dandy. But out like when we hit stop recording, we a lot of times have either jobs to attend to or just personal like issues that we have to attend to. Like I've been meaning to call the doctor for literally weeks now, and I
Same, same. You just said that. I was like, oh my gosh, they closed in just a little bit, and it's
I right? That's what I'm saying. Everyone has their own walk with Christ. Everyone has their own story being written. Everyone has a like different life that they are living in the moment. Like I said, so many times I've like hit stop or like I've hit upload to YouTube and then I go to work and I'm there for like 8 or 7 hours. And then I
mhm.
come home and all of a sudden it's like a bunch of things like, hey, why didn't you respond yet? I'm like, sorry, I was like at work.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people don't respond, it really is that they just are busy. And if someone isn't specifically reaching out to you, because I know I sometimes get a little bit discouraged about that. And Jordan, I'm pretty sure you can also relate because we both overthink everything. There are times in which people just don't reach out just simply because it just doesn't cross people's mind. I was literally talking to my mom about that one time, like a few weeks ago, I think, and she was saying like, yeah, like as we were driving, she was like, I know, like I used to get so upset about it, but then I literally was like, some people just don't even think to do that, and it's not like they're a bad person for not thinking to do that. People just don't think to do that. It's a lot of just overthinking and training your brain to not assume the worst.
Absolutely. And kind of circling back around to the I give, but I don't get kind of mentality. I think as Christians, it's important to realize that to be the salt and light in the world, just walking after the footsteps of Jesus, we do live in a way where we are going to serve, we are going to give more than we get, and it's all for the
Mm-hmm.
glory of God. Easier
Absolutely.
said than done, but I actually pulled up a set of Bible verses that I feel pertain to this, and it's from Philippians 2. I mean, I would say Philippians in general is just good, but I'm only going to read verse 4 where it says, "Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others."
Mm-hmm.
So I,
Allie.
I think that's very important. And for those who are providing care for mental health, people who are struggling with mental health or anything in general, I think it's important to remind yourself that it's okay to also attend to your mental health. And this is something I implore others, and it is a huge frustration of mine where people just blame their behavior solely on their mental health and they don't take responsibility for their actions. As somebody who struggles with bipolar disorder, always it always bothers me when people are like, "Oh, sorry, I'm bipolar. I can't help it." Like, so that they use that as an excuse to lash out, go on a violent rage, curse and cuss people out. And it's like, while those emotions can be hard to control, especially when you're manic, it's not an excuse to indulge in those things. You have to understand that certain people will only stick around in a relationship and put up with that for so long and excuse it for so long. So, if it is a problem that you are having, you need to seek immediate help for the health of your interpersonal relationships, especially if it comes to mental or mental, emotional, or physical abuse towards another individual, because that's never okay to impose problems on another person because you yourself are struggling with problems. And it's always best to sit down and communicate with the person what you are struggling with, and maybe spending time apart or whatever it is. But it's important not to keep the cycle going. It's important not to just give into emotions. Like if I feel something creeping up inside of me and I'm feeling angry with a person, I know that I need to take a step back because I know that it could get very volatile if I don't. And it's not always easy. So when I do slip up and say something that I shouldn't have said or responded in a way that I shouldn't have, I try to make amends for it. And you have to be okay if it sucks because sometimes it feels like it's out of your control, but at the same time, if a person is unwilling to forgive or that wound was cut so deep that they need time to heal, you have to respect that because even though it's you struggling with a mental illness, it's also a wound that you inflicted. And you can't expect somebody to just be like, okay, well, it's mental illness. Well, if this is going to be an ongoing issue, I don't know if I can be around it. And you have to be okay with that, especially if you're not going to take the time to work on yourself. If you are interested in supporting us in any way, we do have a Patreon link and donation links in the description box below. You can check out Jack and over on ChristianConvos. That link is in the description box below as well. And we will see you back for another Mental Health Monday next week. Take care.